Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the NoDQ.com recap live stream for the NXT Takeover War Games 2020 event, the final takeover of 2020, and what a show. A lot to discuss, a longer takeover than usual, just over 3 hours, 5 matches, 3 hours. Typically, takeovers go about 2.5 hours or so. Let's go ahead and talk about the matches. Shout out to everybody in the chat room watching this live, and thank you to everybody watching this on demand as well. We kicked off the pay-per-view with Team Shotzi versus Team Candice, the women's War Games match. And they had a special configuration for the cage this year because it was inside the Capitol Wrestling Center, aka the Performance Center. Not the standard setup for the cage, but they did get the cage in there, the 2 rings. And keep in mind, at one point they had like 5 rings inside the Performance Center. There was no problem getting 2 rings in there. Some people were like, could WWE pull that off? They pulled it off just fine. They had the cage set up just fine. Everything worked out. We had Dakota Kai starting off for Candice's team, and Ember Moon started for Blackheart's team. They went back and forth for the first 5 minutes. Now, keep in mind for this match, the Babyfaces, Shotzi's team, they had the advantage, which is not normally how these matches are booked. Typically, the heels have the upper hand in the War Games match so they can get the heat throughout the entire thing. It was a little interesting, but there was something that the heels had going for them. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. We had the people coming in after the first 5 minutes. One person would come in, then somebody else would come in. And at one point, they started bringing in weapons. Gonzalez had a weapon, and then Rhea Ripley had a hammer and hit Dakota Kai with the hammer multiple times, yet somehow Kai was able to recover from that. If this was real life, a couple of hammer shots would probably kill her, but she recovered from it. I'm not sure what kind of hammer it was. It was too small to be a sledgehammer. Maybe somebody in the chat room can help me on this one. What kind of hammer it was exactly. Tony Storm brought in a kendo stick. There were a few things I was not a huge fan of in this match. For one thing, there was a sequence where 3 of the women were in one ring and then 3 women were in the other ring, and they all did their moves at the same time. Both rings, they did a move at the same time. The problem with this was that you could hear a countdown, 1, 2, go. And to me, it just came off too choreographed. And then later on in the match, there was something else that I caught. And Candice LeRae was laying on the mat, and she had a steel chair up against her chest. And she basically raised her hand up and was giving the signal for Io Shirai to do her move off the ladder. So other than those few things where it just blatantly looked choreographed, I thought the match was really good. The women worked very hard in this, and it was very physical. They were using weapons. You had Io Shirai climbing up to the top of the cage. She put a trash can over her head, and then she jumped off the cage onto everybody. And these spots look really cool, but I also sometimes just shake my head because you have everybody standing at the bottom just looking up at her. Everybody stops fighting. They just look up. I know for safety reasons they want to make sure they catch her, but I always think that these spots look a little bit too choreographed. I have mixed feelings about them. They look spectacular, but at the same time, I'm like, well, this looks pretty fake. TJS with a $3 super chat says, should WWE move their special events to Saturdays? TJS going off topic, of course. I'm fine with Sunday, but then again, I do not have a standard Monday to Friday job. Maybe some people would prefer Saturday so they don't have to worry about working the next day. I get what you're saying with that, TJS. So, anyways, after Shirai did her big dive onto everybody, the match continued. Went back and forth. Several near fall attempts during the match. And a ladder bridge was set up between the two rings. And Gonzalez slammed Io Shirai through the ladder bridge and scored the pinfall victory. Now, I forgot to mention that earlier, Indy Hartwell got involved in helping out Candice's team. So that was their way of evening the odds, I guess, because they had the disadvantage. So Indy Hartwell got involved, and it was essentially 5-on-4 with Indy's involvement. But yeah, I did enjoy the match. I'm still not really understanding why they had the faces with the advantage in the match, but match was really solid, very strong War Games match here. Could have been the main event of the show, and when it was over, I'm thinking, how are the men going to top this? But we'll get to that. Team Candice did pick up the win. It was a little interesting to me also that Shirai took the fall. I guess they really want to build up Gonzalez as the next contender for the championship by giving her the win over Shirai in this match. Next up, we had Tamassa Champa versus Timothy Thatcher. Thatcher, of course, trying to exploit Champa, going after the surgically repaired neck in the early moments of the match, and the announcers kept bringing up the history of Ciampa's injuries. Ciampa was able to stay in the fight, of course. He hit a series of clotheslines, ran the ropes, hit a clothesline, went back and forth from each side of the ring, hitting clotheslines. He hit a superplex onto Thatcher. And then Ciampa went for the fairy tale ending, but Thatcher took a shot at the throat to regain the advantage. And then they both ended up on the outside of the ring. Ciampa almost got counted out, but managed to get back in the ring. He put a submission onto Thatcher. Thatcher's ear at one point got busted open really bad. He was just gushing blood out of the ear. That was brutal. And Ciampa did pick up the victory with the Willow's Bell DDT, aka the Draping DDT. Very solid match here with these guys. I mean, they just had a really solid pro wrestling match. And the blood, it looked painful, but it was a nice touch for the match. Good stuff here from these guys. We had our strap match between Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes. Grimes wanted to use his own strap. They had an official strap for the match, but Grimes had a strap that he wanted to use. And the referee asked Lumis if this was okay. And as this was all happening, Grimes attacked Lumis before the match could even get going. They ended up on the outside of the ring. Lumis was able to get strapped up. The match officially began. They were on the outside. Grimes attempted to escape even though they were strapped together. And Lumis caught him and then threw Grimes into the barricade that separates the fans from the wrestlers. And then they fought over by the barricade where the hard camera is. There's no plexiglass over there. Lumis was thrown over the barricade, and Grimes started to have some offense on Lumis. He had a bag, a sack that he put over Lumis's head. So it felt like a blindfold match almost at one point here. Grimes continued to get in some offense, and then he grabbed the steel chair since it's all legal in this kind of match. He used it, but then his downfall was that he got just a little bit too arrogant. He set up the chair, he sat down, he was having a good time with himself, and that's when Lumis got back into the mix. And Lumis just the gaze in his eyes. Grimes tripped and fell face first onto the chair. Loomis then put on his submission to silence. He took the strap and wrapped it around Grimes for extra leverage. And Grimes finally submitted. Real life says it's plexiglass. There's an L in there. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you correcting my embarrassing mistake on a live stream. Let's move on here to, by the way, the strap match. Good match. Was not a classic or anything. You know, it was what it was. A match in the middle of the show between two War Games matches. It was fine. Mike B with a $3 super chat. Thank you for that, Mike B. He sent in a cat sticker, which I appreciate. I guess that's my cue to plug my personal channel, which has some cat Christmas videos. And if you like cats in general, there's a lot of interesting content on there. Well, interesting if you like cats at least. Over at youtube.com/AaronRift. Next up, we had the North American Championship match, which was Leon Ruff defending against Johnny Gargano and Damian Priest. Before the match, it should be noted that the lights flickered as the announcers were talking, and we had a video of a vulture. And no, this was not a sign that Sting was coming back. Sting is on the other channel now. But this was a little teaser for the return of Karrion Kross. TikTok, Kross is back. And by the way, it was also announced that the next NXT special will be on USA Network January 6th. It will be the New Year's Evil to kick off 2021. I wonder if we're going to get an NXT World Title match, maybe Finn Balor versus Karrion Kross on that night. Maybe NXT can pull off a victory against AEW to start the new year. So we had this triple threat match, and basically you had Gargano trying to put away Ruff as quickly as possible. He threw Priest out of the ring, tried to pin Ruff on numerous occasions. Priest got back into the mix, and Priest had a warning for Ruff. Stay out of his way. Of course, Ruff, he's young, he's defiant, he's the champion, he's got some confidence. He did not listen to Priest, and Priest responded by taking Ruff and doing the Razor's Edge through the barricade and the plexiglass. Referees came out to check on Ruff. Ruff was having a very rough time here, and they escorted him out, so he appeared to be out of the match, but he came back pretty quickly. Ruff, I thought he was going to maybe come out for the finish and steal the win, but he actually did come back quite a bit earlier than I was expecting. He did a dive off the top to the outside onto both guys, and then after a few more minutes of back and forth action, we had the Ghost Faces show up, and there were something like 6 of them. 6 Ghost Faces. Is this the new Dark Order or something? Like, this is getting a little ridiculous. We had all these Ghost Faces try to help Johnny Gargano get the upper hand. And at one point, Leon Ruff almost stole the victory, but you had Priest come in and break up the pinfall at the last second. Then there was a 7th Ghostface who used a lead pipe onto Priest, and then Gargano hit the one final beat onto Ruff and scored the victory to regain the North American Championship. He is now a 3-time champion, Johnny Gargano, and after the match, Ghostface, the one with the pipe, I presume the main one, the other guys must just be Retribution rejects, I don't know. We had the Ghostface unmasked, and not really a surprise here. It was heavily rumored it was him. Austin Theory. That's right. It's him. It's him, Austin. It was him all along. Match was entertaining, but it was a little bit much with all the ghost faces and all these different things happening. No real surprise that Ruff lost the title right away. It was pretty much just done for shits and giggles, I suppose. And I agree with some of the comments on social media. It should have been David Arquette as the guy. Just if we really wanted to make it funny, you're going to turn this North American title storyline into a comedy. Go all the way and have David Arquette as the guy behind it. Ma W says they're playing hot potato with the title. And Adrian says Priest needs to move to the main roster. I'm sure he'll be there sooner than later. You know, he's one of those guys that will actually get pushed. Him, Karrion Kross. Kross will be in NXT for a while since he was just getting started. And Loomis. Those are the three guys right now that will probably get a big push on the main roster once there's a spot for them. The one and only Caleb Jacobs with a $3.56 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. He says, at least Ruff can say he was a champion. Very true, but he's got to bulk up a little bit because he's standing there and Johnny Gargano, who's not the most muscular guy in the world, he looked like a heavyweight standing next to Leon Ruff. Just saying. And now we move on to our main event, the men's War Games cage match. The Undisputed Era, I believe this was their fourth. I think they've been in every one, right? Since the War Games concept was developed in NXT. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is their fourth one, and they've been in every single one up to this point. Undisputed Era versus Team McAfee, Pat McAfee, of course, and Pete Dunne, Danny Burch, and Oney Lorcan. Kyle O'Reilly and Pete Dunne started the match. And in this one, it was pretty traditional with the heels having the advantage. So after the first 5 minutes, Lorcan was the next man in to help out Dunne, and they double-teamed O'Reilly for a while. Strong came in to make the save, evening the odds. Then it was Burch coming out, and Burch brought in a cricket bat. So I was thinking, how are they going to make this match different from the first one? Just change weapons. That's the key. Instead of chairs, bring in cricket bats. Instead of ladders, which we had in the first match, bring in some tables. That's how you do it. You just change up the weapons. So eventually, McAfee was in, and he had 4 tables. And this is how I knew, because you guys know how it goes. This is how I knew McAfee's team was going to lose. Because whoever brings in the tables, introduces the tables, well, it ends up biting them in the ass, and they're the ones that go through the tables. McAfee had 4 tables with each member of the Undisputed Era listed on each respective table. So you know how this is going. Although the first one McAfee actually got, he was sitting in the corner while his guys did the dirty work, and they set up Strong on Strong's table, and McAfee did a moonsault, a very nice looking moonsault, putting Strong through that first table. So the first one was actually a success, but spoiler alert, the other ones were not as successful. We finally had Adam Cole make his entrance as the last person, and Cole had a fire extinguisher. Now, here's one of the few nitpick moments of this match. You already had McAfee going under this same exact spot, grabbing those tables. Surely he would have seen that fire extinguisher and known what Adam Cole was up to, but I guess he missed it. Maybe it's really dark under there. I don't know. But Cole grabbed that fire extinguisher, same spot where the tables were, and used it on all 4 McAfee team members. Cole started to beat down the guys. He had a hot moment here, taking out everybody. And then O'Reilly started taunting McAfee, which led to Cole using a steel chair on McAfee. Brawl erupted with everybody fighting. McAfee put on a figure 4 onto Cole, but Cole reversed it, and then Dunne broke up the hold. Then the Undisputed Era really kicked it into high gear, and I thought we were coming to the end of the match. I mean, they were beating the crap out of everybody on McAfee's team, and Dunn and Birch got put through a table, although the first attempt, I am the table, did not break, so they had to do it a second time, and those guys went through the table. And then McAfee was on the top rope with Cole. Cole shoved McAfee off the top rope through a table, and I thought this was going to be it. Undisputed Era took him out. And this was only just the beginning, folks. So McAfee was put through the table, and they beat the crap out of McAfee. He tried to escape. Eventually, McAfee's team members were able to make the save after McAfee took quite the beating. He was thrown into the cage repeatedly. Everybody started fighting again, so it was back to where we were when it all started, with everybody fighting except McAfee. McAfee climbed up the cage, and then he jumped off the cage with a swanton bomb onto everybody. And again, it was basically the same thing that Io Shirai did earlier. Everybody stopped fighting. They looked up. They stood there as McAfee did his swanton. And I was like, why don't these guys just move? Let them crash and burn, especially the baby faces in the match. The heels, too, they should be like, I don't want to get hit by this guy 20 feet up there. But anyways, you know, it's a spectacular moment when these guys do this stuff. So, you know, whatever. It was very cool. And then another nitpicking moment. O'Reilly and Dunn, despite being the first two in the match, so they should theoretically be the most worn out, they were the first ones back to their feet. And they started fighting back and forth while everybody else was dead. Dunn hit a bitter end, but O'Reilly kicked out of it. McAfee had a steel chair, and then Cole got the chair. However, McAfee used a low blow onto Cole. McAfee then went for a punt, but he missed. And then as Cole and McAfee were going at it, Birch was in the middle. A table had been set up, leaning up against the cage, and Birch was speared through the table by Bobby Fish. Then Adam Cole hit the Panama Sunrise onto McAfee. And again, I thought this was it. I'm like, these guys have had a hell of a match. You know, it's been going on for a while. This has got to be it. But no, McAfee kicked out of it, and the match continued. Lorcan then came in as Cole was going for the last shot to finish off McAfee. Lorcan came in and took the bullet from McAfee. And then at this point, it went crazy. Everybody started hitting their big moves one after another. Bam, bam, bam. And then you had O'Reilly climb up halfway to the top of the cage, and he hit a diving knee, I should say, off the top rope all the way down onto Lorcan. And Lorcan had a chair covering his face, and he may have gotten hurt from that one. O'Reilly hit the diving knee and scored the pinfall victory. Undisputed Era defeating Pat McAfee's team. Man, that was a hell of a match. That match went almost an hour long. Both cage matches went a very long time. And I continue to argue this. As great as both of these matches were, I think I would have enjoyed them better if they were not two matches. Like if it was just one match, I think I would have gotten more enjoyment out of it. I just started to feel that fatigue by the end of this, but it was a hell of a match. Loved it. Great stuff. Both of them were really well done. Everybody put in A+ effort, and I was entertained by it. I was entertained by both matches. The one and only Caleb Jacobs with a $2 super chat says, and that's undisputed. Indeed it is, Caleb Jacobs. And as Adrian points out, 2 wins, 2 losses for UE at War Games. Yeah, there was so much happening, especially in that men's match. So many times I thought it was over, and then they started right back at square one again. There was a lot to digest from that match. And then you had both matches the same night. There was just a lot of stuff happening in both matches, almost 2 hours combined of War Games action with weapons and people jumping off the cage and going into the cage and just lots of chaos. Curtis Butler says he wasn't fatigued. Well, you have more stamina than me, my friend. And he says, I enjoyed the men's match better. So yeah, that was my next question to you guys in the chat room. Which one do you think was better? Did you enjoy the women's match better, or did you enjoy the men's match better? I would probably go with the men's match, just because I still don't really understand having the babyface women with the advantage, that whole thing. But overall, I think I would go with the men, and I think it was the right call for the men to close the show, especially if the good guys are going over. All the more reason why I thought Undisputed Era would win, because they were closing the show. Tic-tat-tat with the men. Adrian men, Nick Glavin men, Tyson men, Michael Wayne men, Israel men. Pretty much everyone's saying the men's match, although Adrian says the women's match exceeded my expectations, though. And Kev says the women's match was great as well. So as far as the letter grade goes for this show, I'm going to give it an A. Other than a few nitpicking moments, I miss more Ronaldo, I miss the fans, and I'm just thinking like, man, if we had 15,000 people in the arena when the Undisputed Era was beating the crap out of Pat McAfee, that place would have come unglued. That would have been epic. So I miss the fans, and I think the lack of fans, they had the piped in noise, and the "This is awesome" chants, it's a little cringy in my opinion, but they got to make the most of the situation. If we had Ronaldo with the fans, like, this could have been an A+ pay-per-view. Like, it would have just been that little extra oomph to put it over the top. But, judging it by what they put out content-wise, solid A. CC Drink with an A-, Kev with an A, Marvin with an A-, Colin Andrew with an A, Curtis Butler with a B+, Ace and His Familiar Vlogs with an A+, Mike B with an A-, Israel Diaz with an A-, Lewis with an A, and Tyson with an A. So pretty much A's across the board for this show. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it, and maybe watch one cage match one day and watch the other one the next day. You might appreciate them both more if you're not watching them back to back or watching the whole pay-per-view in one fell swoop. So that was my review of the Takeover pay-per-view. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and spread the word. Tell a friend. I will be back for the Raw recap. Have a great week, everyone. Be positive, stay safe, and I will see you guys next time.